In this video, I'll give you a rundown on everything you need to know about stippling and take you through a couple of use cases. So last video, I realized there's a whole lot of terminology and assumed knowledge that I totally take for granted. And so in this video, I'm starting a sort of a series or library of sorts of different techniques and stuff and how I use them. So hopefully I can help some of you learn some cool stuff, but mostly so I can do that thing where I point to the top corner of the screen and then a recommendation pops up and then it's 4 AM and you never knew there was so much to know about the Black Plague in 14th century England. Anyway, stippling. Stippling refers to the process of painting with lots of small dots or specks. It's just another way of applying paint to your miniatures. Stipple also sounds kind of like nipple, which is one of the main benefits of this painting technique. Help me. And it has so many uses for us miniature painters. You can use it to create a nice gradient really quickly, create the basis for a much smoother gradient over a longer period of time, create fine textures like wool or fabric, create not so fine textures like rust or peeling paint, paint wizard hats, paint literally whatever you want. It also has the tendency to ruin brushes in record time, so I definitely recommend using a not so new brush without a sharp tip. Or, if you're an idiot like me, you can use one of your fancy new Winsor & Newton brushes. And if you do some stippling with it, pretty soon you're gonna have a not so new brush without a sharp tip. Stippling works by the concentration of slightly transparent dots over a larger area. If I have one dot, like this, and then I add lots more dots over the area, then I get this sort of uniform textured look. The real magic begins when you start concentrating your dots to where you want your light to be strongest. Because of the uneven nature of the paint, it's much easier to create an organic looking transition between your two tones. And already, with just one color, we got a cool transition. We can add a couple more colors to heighten the effect. And this is the same piece after a bunch of glazing. You get that smooth transition that glazes are known for, and then all this awesome texture still visible underneath. Best of both worlds. There's a few ways of going about making your transition too. I like to start with the base layer and then progressively work my way up to my highest highlight color, like this. But depending on how you like to paint, you can start with a mid-tone and stipple up and down to get your lights and shadows. Or even block in your lights with a relatively hard line and stipple the midtones to blend the two together. There are two main variables that'll alter the look of your final product. And once you know what they are and how to control them, you can get precisely the look you're going for. Number one, paint consistency. Like any acrylic painting technique, the amount of water you add to your paint will change how it behaves. More water gives you thinner paint, more transparency, and a smoother effect, but obviously it takes longer to cover. Thicker paint gives you opacity and covering power in a short amount of time, but creates a much rougher texture and will very quickly start adding literal texture to your paint. Number two, placement. The size of your dots and the space between your dots. Stipples? Stipple is one dot, one stipple. Spreading out the marks you make increases the size of the texture you're making, and depending on the size of brush, this could begin to look like tiny chips or rough cloth, or something else entirely. And a bonus, stipple tip. Perceived randomness or unevenness in your stippling can be your absolute best friend. If you place all of your dots exactly 1 millimeter apart, perfectly spaced and even, then the human eye is going to pick up a pattern, and that's all you'll see. But if your dots are random in size, some larger, some smaller, and your paint's kind of transparent in different consistencies and overlapping unevenly, it's going to mimic the subtle and complex interplay of light and shadows and really bring your mini to life. Like anything and everything in the miniature painting world, experimentation is your best friend when it comes to applying new techniques and integrating them into the way that you paint. And stippling's fast enough that if you don't like it, you can just paint over it. It's just paint. Here's an example I whipped up. One of my all-time favourite sculpts, Nicodemus the Cursed Pilgrim from Mordheim. Almost all the volumes here are stippled on, intentionally with minimal glazing to keep that rough, worn cloth texture. If you like his base, there's a video on that, up here. Yes. And that just about covers it. If you have any questions, ask away in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you wanna. Have a good one. See you next time.